It's the setting up. That's where you put your effort. So if I was going to coach anybody on this, is be super diligent and push your effort into booking calls, because the product is so good, the process is so good. You'll get good at it, right? Just get the reps in, but you got to get people on the phone and know also where to put your efforts.
Welcome back, folks. I got a refill on, I think I switched over to Woodford Preserve. What are you drinking now?
I am drinking a Twisted Tea, and these are pretty awesome, and they sponsor a motocross team, which is pretty cool.
Oh, yeah. So that actually, that's another thing that Rami and I have in common. Like, my dad owned motorcycle shops growing up, so I raced motocross, and Rami was a really good motocross racer, almost turned pro, and then...
and almost died, so there you go.
Died. Yeah.
So I got a good story there.
Yeah. But it's funny, we were both talking about... the negative effects of alcohol. I have maybe one drink a week. It's just not that good for you guys. We were just talking about the latest Andrew Huberman podcast about alcohol, and there's not much good to say about it, honestly, other than it's just fun.
Yeah, it really is, and it's a trade-off. And if you've ever done, I do these sober Octobers or sober whatever with friends, and there's this like, oh my God, how could I possibly do that, right? Because my whole life is centered around going out and with my friends, and after about a week, no one cares. Like, and literally, and you feel so freaking good.
Do you still go out though?
Yeah, okay, I go out and I fill a club soda and I put a lime in it and I just pretend I'm drinking. I actually pretend to slur. It's super fun. Like, literally, like pretend I'm drunk. But it is amazing if you do it. I know it's a little strange, but if you do it long enough, you realize how detrimental alcohol is. And we're having a drink and it's fine.
Take it back. When I was in college, I would pretend to be drunk so that girls could take advantage of me.
Oh, that's
But
good.
that was just me.
I know. Yeah. Well, you're such a stud,
Yeah. Well, I didn't want them to feel bad, All right,
Here we go.
Yeah, definitely.
We had 7 of these in between.
Another reason why we don't drink too much. So listen, this is part 2 of the pre-sale. So in part 1, Rami laid out the history, how he got from private ownership of his own gym to a couple of other entrepreneurial ventures, both all very successful, and then how he ended up investing in an alloy gym. So go back and listen to part 1. And we covered one of our 3 points. So the first one was why. Like, what are the 3 things that will make you successful at a pre-sale? The first one is you got to have a really big why. And so we really dug in there and actually went into your why as well as the client's why as well. So, man, step 2 or number 2 is one that we talked about pre-podcast, and it may be the biggest one, but I don't know. I don't know if there's they all kind of intermingle.
They kind of link, yeah.
Number 2 is organization. It's really just about organizing your time, right, and how you allocate time, because there's a lot going on. There's a lot of leads coming in. So, how did you keep track?
Yeah, and that's really cool. And
I mean, obviously we have software, but I mean,
yeah. And I think it's really funny, Rick, that we thought we were going to get through 3 points, just 3 points.
This may be a 3-parter, just saying. Saying.
This could be a 9-hour podcast, and we only got through 1. So, hey, can I jump into results first? Because I always like to start with that. Can we jump into
stats?
This is stats.
Yeah, so Rami's going to read off his stats. Now,
yeah, because I want to get the audience intrigued. This is part of being a writer. This is foreshadowing.
I've always found that rattling off a bunch of I'm
going to read numbers.
Really going to get people excited.
Yeah, well, I won't go through all of them, but I just want to talk about because I'll
tell you what. You read the stats. I'll put them in context with what we normally see.
There you go.
We'll do it that way. So go for it. What do you got?
Really
Talk about your results.
Yeah. So I like it because I'm competitive. And again, going back, if you listen to the first one, it's all about helping people and it's all about the why, right? But you can't help people until you get them in your club. And I think people forget that, right? Okay. So important.
Repeat that last thing.
You cannot help people until you get them into your club.
Okay, one more time for the people in the back.
I forgot what I said. I can't remember.
No, one more time for the people in the back.
Help people till you get them in your club.
We could mic drop and leave it here.
We could end the podcast.
Love it, man.
Yeah.
Love it. Yes.
Yeah, because, and people say that, I don't want to bug people.
Sales.
I don't want to call people at 6 o'clock at night. They're having dinner. Go back to the first podcast, that guy that I bugged, right, all that time. I look back so we owned a commercial building that our gym was in, right?
Hey, do me a favor. Don't tap the table as much because I hear it. Yeah, exactly. You hear that thumping? That's Rami beating the table to make a point.
I'm really emphasizing. Right. I will not. And so, we owned a commercial building in the gym that I owned. So we basically rented from ourselves. And I don't know, 5 years ago, a commercial realtor guy reached out to me and I'm like, no, we're not selling our building. And that guy reached out to me every month for 5 years. Very nice, and stats. I want to be your guy. Just let me know. I wasn't even in the market. Guess who I went to when we went to sell the building? Did he bug me? Yeah, he bugged me constantly. Called me once a month, sent me an email once a month. I thanked him profusely. I use that example all the time. You never know when that's going to happen. So we're all so busy, and we're going to forget. People are going to, how many ads do they get for gyms, right? Yep. So you're not bugging people. So anyway.
Well, on that note, something to add to that I've loved, it's a great example, is in our business, I can put the right message in front of the right person. We've got our customer avatar nailed. Yeah, thank you. And I know exactly what that person needs. We know the breakdown. We know our typical goals. The wild card is when.
Yes.
And when is like, okay, that's it. Like I went on a hike with my family. I'm embarrassed I couldn't keep up, or my knee really hurt, or I got pictures back from my cruise. And I mean, I'm not doing this anymore, right?
Yeah.
The point of being relentless and consistently marketing and doing community outreach, even if your gym is full, which we're at that place with several of our gyms, you still keep it going because you never know when that person is going to respond. We had a guy walk in, this is probably 10 years ago, but even at that time, because we've been in business so long, he came in with a 15-year-old flyer that he had. Now, listen, I'm not saying that like that's a good return on investment. Yeah. Wow. How long have you been here? Jesus.
It was 10 years ago. It was a 15-year-old flyer.
10, 15 is only 25. I've been here 30 years. So
that's right.
He came in 10 years ago holding a 15-year-old flyer. It was a Good Bodies flyer.
Oh my gosh.
And he said, I've had this on my fridge for 15 years. And I got back from, I can't remember the story, but I got back from a cruise or whatever. And I thought to myself, I'm going to go to that place. And he's like, is this thing still good? Yeah. And of course, I'm standing there like mouth agape. I'm like, yeah, you're fine. Come on in. But I couldn't believe it, right? Case or point, get out there.
Personal training was $8 an hour.
We kept our records on stone tablets. We got here by sent our messages by Pony Express, the whole deal. But point being, keep your message out there because you never know when it's going to hit.
Yeah, for sure. And so when I go over these stats real quick, and I won't bore everybody forever, but I'm super competitive. By the way, these poor guys, I have all their mobile numbers. I would text them every freaking day with my stats. And, you told me you loved it. So that was the worst thing you ever could have told me. So
no, I really did.
Well, it motivates me.
It fired me up.
Yeah, it fired me up. It fired, and I also told you guys when I had bad days too. And so the goal, I had stats in my head. I had goals that I wanted to hit. So, we're looking at 60 people sold. And if you listen to the first episode, sold is credit card on file, agreement signed, and then at the end, the starting point booked, right? Like to me, those are the three
major. And that $0 transaction
running the
$0 it's a valid
so
card.
You know that it's an actual credit card. So it's truly a sale. You haven't run an actual transaction yet, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But so 60 people is cash flow positive, and the gym 75 we can open. So
we'll slow down on that for a sec. So in Rami's situation, because he's got every gym's a little bit different, but for their location with their rent factor and everything. At 60 sold, when they open, they would be cash flow break even, right? Or cash flow positive. Yep. So all he needed to do was to sell 60 to get to break even. And listen, if you haven't opened a business before, opening at break even is amazing. Opening making money is like a whole different deal. Unheard of. So he's going to tell you a little bit. I have to be careful with it because as a franchise, I can't make claims. So this is Rami telling his story, and I'll weigh in on it. But these are real stats coming from him. So in his location at 60, he was at break even. Go ahead.
And also just getting back to this part of my why that I didn't tell you. So, once I decided I was going to buy into the business, that I wrote an operating agreement, and my operating agreement as a part owner, I didn't make a penny until we had 75 members. And I wrote that myself. They didn't write it. And I did that because I wanted to make sure I was driven to make us profitable, right? And so I had that almost hanging over me. So I pushed really hard for the first 4 weeks. So I actually hit 60 by week 4. So what's that, 15 a week? So that wasn't bad. I kept texting you, how am I doing? And we were at 75, basically able to open the club 5 weeks into presale.
Right. And so, to that, what Rami means is we require you to have 75. So in his case, at 75, they're making money. And that's the bare minimum to open.
Yeah, and that was at week 5.
Yep. So 5 weeks in, you're making 12. Money. You're allowed to open. Good to go.
We hit 100 by week 7, and then we were at 130, which is technically full.
Correct.
By 8.5 weeks.
Unreal.
So we killed it, right? And I'll be very transparent about kind of what happened after and how many of those became billing members and the lessons we learned there too, right?
Well,
so
partly,
I kept going.
And part of that is again, Rami was really fortunate. Not in this was hard work, Leading up to that, they found real estate in record time.
Oh my gosh. And
Easy.
a great spot.
Oh, dude, perfect. Right next to like a little boutique grocery store, all this stuff, right? So found the perfect spot, got the right rent factor. Landlord was very amicable, pushed it right through, lickety split. Construction was done.
Permits early.
Permitting early, which is like never happens. Construction done early, which never happens. So we actually allowed you guys to open a couple of weeks before because of how many that you had sold. Now, in hindsight, based on the amount of work that's done between the sale and getting people like to their starting point session and leveled in and picking their time slot, that's also work. That's the whole, like, I'm selling, here's my operator. We squeeze that time down, which put an insane amount of pressure on Joy, your operator.
Way too much.
And that was a mistake.
It was a mistake.
We should have said, no. Give it the extra 2 weeks. You know, you were excited. We were like, okay, he's selling like a madman. Let's get it rolling. In hindsight, and you're going to speak to this, we should have waited that 2 weeks. It would have given us a little bit more runway to get all that extra stuff done.
Yeah,
right?
and I would have kept selling what I would have kept. I would have kept pushing, right? But I would have, and then I would have also, just jumping ahead. I would have leaned in more and helped Joy with the starting point sessions. Right. I really should have done that. I was still selling full time, and so we'll get into that with organization. So I kept selling after 1:30 because I was like, "There's going to be churn." You told me that, and I knew there would be.
It's about 10% typically.
Yeah, and we started selling the middle of March, and we didn't open until June 1st. So there were people that we were calling for starting points that were like, "Who are you?" And that's another thing that we will do much better that we did not do well was nurturing those people during that time.
We did mention that a couple times,
about 50 times, and you have all the tools for it. And
you're like, yeah.
The joke with these guys is like, you would say, "Well, it's in the manual," and I'd go, "There's a manual."
It's like 800 pages.
I read the sales part. That was it.
That's
so
it.
So I kept selling, got to 145, sold. And then we just basically said, let's shut down the marketing, because to that point, we're like, why don't we just save that money? We can always turn it back on.
Do you remember what your spend was? I don't have it in front of me, so I don't remember.
I don't know.
You spend?
I don't know exactly, but I know it was significally under what the budget was.
Right.
So
and again, I don't want to set that precedence, but
right.
Good for you, right?
Yeah, no, it was great. And, we did
good for
really,
Will
really
and our marketing team, right? I mean,
they're amazing.
It's funny because
they're amazing.
The contrast between someone like Rami, who is very positive and his glass is always half full, and he's just constant ball of energy. He's always going forward. Yeah, mine's. I've worked at that, by the way. You can look at. I could talk to two people, and I could go to Rami. How are the leads? And he's like freaking amazing, and he's closing 40%. Right. I could go to someone else, same lead, same market. How are your leads? Oh, I don't know. I don't know where we're getting these people. Right.
Yeah.
That's not happening often. But if we had a director that was struggling in sales, it was always like, man, I don't know.
Yeah, the leads are bad.
You go back and listen to the calls. It's like, it's not the leads. Look at what Rami's doing. He may even have less leads than you guys, and he's just crushing. Right?
Yeah.
So I always appreciated that perspective. But it also was a reinforcement for what we know is if you're talking to a sales team and you go, how are your leads? And they go, I'm like, say no more. I know exactly why you're not succeeding.
Yeah,
you're starting into it thinking you're going to lose.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And it's not, look, they're not 100%. I mean, there's going to be ones that never respond. And I mean, that's part of it. And we get
our expectation, by the way, is 15%. Now, Rami crushed that, knocked it out of the park. But even at 15%, with the budget that we've set forth and the amount of leads that we can produce for that, 15% is going to put you at the number that you need to be, not only to open, but to be, practically full, right? When you open. So,
which is so crazy, from you and I, from our experience, like I don't remember with Good Bodies, right? Which was like 100 years ago, but with Formwell, it was 11 months before I even took a paycheck.
But that's every business.
Yeah. And actually 11 months, everybody told me I did great. They were like, mostly it's 18 months before the owner takes anything out of the business.
Right.
And we opened, we can talk about that.
You already did a distribution?
Yeah, it's crazy.
First month, Rami's like, this is awesome. Yeah. We have people on founders rates and I'm already making money. I'm like, pretty nice, huh?
Yeah, and people on half rates and all that. So what that broke down to, we talked in the first thing about some of my best days. I actively sold for 51 days. So I sold 6 days a week, took Sundays completely off. We talked about that before. In the beginning, I did not. Goes against me as a religious person. I shouldn't have done it. And there's reasons for the Sabbath. There's reasons for the day off, right? And I didn't do as well. So once I started taking that day off, I actually did better. My best sales day was always Mondays, always. And best sales time was 8 to 10, by the way.
AM?
AM, yeah. 2 in the morning didn't work well. I don't know. I tried that. Yeah.
You know what?
Hey, wake up.
Did you see my lack of surprise?
Yeah, I know.
You would do that.
I would. I'd wake up and go, oh, there's that guy I want to get. Well, it's funny because Will, we're talking about Will, who was the KISS, the marketing
He's
team,
our marketing vendor.
vendor. And he's like, you're not supposed to text at 5 a.m, right? And I was like, really? Everybody's not up at 5 a.m.?
That's when he texted me, by the way.
I know. And Jared and everybody, poor guys. So my best day, I went 9 for 9. So that was really cool. So I had one day, I had 9 phone calls. So to me, that's a call. That's not 9 leads. That could be 30 leads. Right. But I have a call booked and I closed
once they got on a call, because there's steps to get to that. Once you got them on a call, you close 9 for 9.
9 for 9.
And what's the lifetime value of 9 customers?
That would be $99,000. Yeah, there you go. Boy. Is that right? 11,000 times 9? Yeah, I've had like 12 twisted teas. So basically it came with the average of selling 2.5 people a day. And that's where it came out to, right? We talked about this last time. My best 2 weeks was 42 for 48.
Wow.
So, and I had in a 2 week, and 1 week I did 22 for 24. Those were my good weeks. Yeah, I was hammering at that point. And I wasn't that great in the first week. It's funny going back to it. I told this to Jared. When I did my first day, I was treating each call like a starting point session. They were like a half hour long. I had pages of notes. I was getting their whole history. And I was selling them, but I realized this isn't sustainable. And then I got so much better at that, kind of distilling that down to what really mattered. And it's just hearing their goals, right? Just what are your goals? I did not need to go into all the details of what Alloy does. Most people just want to know, can you help me get to where I want to go? Right?
This is so good.
Yeah, well, it's it. Are you about to cry? Is there a tear?
Did you see it?
I just saw a little tear.
I'm a little bit emotional.
The stat that I still want that we don't have is how did I do once I got on a call? Because a lot of the job is just getting people on the call. So I went back, of course, like an idiot and did that math on my own, and I was 80%. So once I was on a call, I closed 80%. And that shows you the product. It shows you how great the sales tracking is. It's, again, we have perspective, right, Rick? Like we've been there where we didn't have any of this, where it tells me how long has it been since I called this person and, what was there? And really what's great is I go back and I see our whole history. What's the conversation? Because, I'll just blow people up in the way you can text people, as a group and all that. So it worked great. I added this because this is a presentation I did for your training class. So I just added it,
Yeah. So by the way, Rami was so good that we had him come in and during training and coach our franchisees. And I think it's just like a validation call. Like we can tell people whatever we want, but man, like real stats coming from someone who just did it. And it might be similar to what we're teaching, but it hits so much harder when it comes from someone who just went through it. Yeah. So I really, really appreciate that. And we'll probably have you back if you don't mind.
It. No, I love it. And, I hate to talk and I hate being in front of groups. I'm very shy, but, other than that, I'll be fine. But, so the thing is like fast forwarding, I'm at like 200 now, of people that we've gotten. And that doesn't mean we have 200 people in the club, obviously, right? So there's churn. We opened in June, so there was a lot of people who were like, sounds great, here's my credit card. I'm on
vacation for a month.
I'm starting in September. And so I did not want to turn those people down. Right. And they're still on our list, but now I'm literally calling them and saying, you better get in soon because we don't, remember that 6 a.m. slot?
Full
you want it? Yeah, we are full. Yeah. I mean, we've got slots that have waiting lists, right? It's interesting, especially the mornings and a little bit of the evenings. So those are the results, right? And so it was fun, right? But I'm still doing it.
Crazy.
Yeah. And so, just to kind of talk about, to inform sort of the transparency of it. So then let's say we had 150 at week 10. Well, that's 130 to 150 starting point sessions that Joy had to do in 3 weeks?
And we shortened that time, which was a mistake.
Big mistake.
And it was one person. By the way, the reason that we say you need more than one person for pre-sale is it's one thing to go out and sell, which is what Rami was doing.
Yep.
But there are business functions. There are, walkthroughs of the club. There's all kinds of things happening that need to be done logistically.
Sure.
Of which one is getting people in, doing the starting point, choosing a time that's going to work for them, getting them on the schedule. That can be very time consuming. So in hindsight, we shouldn't have squeezed the time, even though construction was done early and everything, because it put way too much pressure on one person to get everyone in.
It really did. And so we lost, our churn is going to be higher than average. That's the only stat that we're not going to kick butt on. And it's just a great lesson, and luckily, the beauty is it really is a spigot. So, we went in and we realized, okay, so I think we billed like 108 in our first month or something. And so we said, all right, let's just turn the marketing back on for 2 weeks. And I sold another 30 people.
Yeah, now you're at 130.
Yeah, now I'm at 130. We're full. But now, got to admit, it's, I sell it. I don't even have to push for the credit card because I'm booking a starting point session the next day. It's
Once
a very
you're
different,
open,
very different sale.
And Joy's great. Like face-to-face sit down, like she's a great coach. She's very believable. She cares a lot. Selling once you're open, having someone come in and sit down, and the starting point session is designed, there's the FMS, there's the peeling of the onion. It's pretty scripted and it works really well. So much different and I would say easier, just different, but different, easier than selling someone over the phone for something that doesn't exist.
Yeah, no doubt. And my mistake, like looking back, or not, I don't like to say mistake, my lesson, because I'm going to do it differently last time, is I hit my 150 and I said to you, I'm out of here, man. Heather and I are going to the Ritz.
Literally went to the Ritz.
I'm partying, we're having fun. And, and then and I'm throwing 150 people at Joy to try to do, and that was too much. And so what I've done is now I've leaned back in. I've taken hours on Saturdays where I'm doing starting points. So that kind of gives her a little bit of a break.
Right.
I can help take that offload, and that's really helping getting people on.
One thing that you guys have done well, because, things are lumpy. If you think taking a brand new business and dumping 130 brand new people into it, like most of them haven't tried it, right?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, they're buying even if like now it's like we don't have a long pre-sale. It's just our normal like half off first month, right? Which works well. But throwing 130 people into there with a whole bunch of coaches that are new, right? Yeah. Getting them all in, it's going to be lumpy at the start. We expect your churn to be about 10%. That's the goal, maybe a bit higher. But to Rami's point, because we put so much downstream pressure on one person, there wasn't enough hours in the day to get everyone in.
No.
So lesson learned, we'll stick to our 12-week time period. So there'll be another 2 or 3 weeks. And if you power down on sales, because if you've sold the place out in 8 weeks, it's like, okay, well, that person then can now circle back and help with some of the processing and onboarding of those clients. That's where we missed.
Yeah, for sure. And I know there's been franchisees that have literally started the starting points before they had a certificate of occupancy.
We always talk about Evan, who was super excited to talk to you.
Yeah.
He ended up having an adjacent space that was open. So all of his sessions have met with him personally.
Yeah.
So full starting point. Putting him on the app, and I think he's broken all your records.
Hey, I know. I saw that. He's killing me. But he's not on this podcast. I'm just going to say that right now.
Yeah, he's not. He's not here.
He's not here.
He's in Ohio.
He doesn't
what
even
does he
exist.
Know? What's up,
Evan? Who's Evan?
Evan. He's crushing it.
You know why he's doing so good?
Because you helped him.
Did a call with me.
So this is a great thing I love about Rami. Rami will do 1 5-minute call with someone and they crush, and he's like, "You're welcome.
You're welcome.
You're welcome."
He's done.
He's my man. That's my boy.
Rick works on selling somebody for a year.
We train him at corporate for a week. We go out to their location. We do all the 1,000,001 things.
I did a 5-minute call.
Rami talks for 5 minutes. He's like, "You're welcome." It's so good.
I do that. So it was super fun, and like I want everybody to win, and that's the cool thing about this, right? And so our second topic was organization, right? So that kind of is to get to this, and so. Just so you guys know, like I don't really consider myself a great salesperson. Like you have these kind of typical sort of archetype of a salesperson,
right.
all slick and all this stuff. And it's not me at all. I'm very, very transparent. I'm very conversational.
You're selling yourself short, but it's because it comes from the right place. It's all the stuff we talked about in podcast one,
my heart.
Which is why it doesn't feel slick and salesy. I mean, it doesn't need to.
It's not sales.
If you believe in what you're selling.
Yeah, and I also go in it totally assuming that they're going to do it. Like I'm shocked when somebody says no. I'm like, really? Because I'm just like, this is such a good thing. And why wouldn't you just, get your money from somewhere else and do this?
And as you know, that manifests itself in every part of the sales process,
right?
Effort and everything else, which we'll get to. Anyway, how did you organize your day? Right. Because keep in mind, you still had your other 2 companies. So I know you said that you were working an obscene amount of hours. But you weren't just doing this.
No.
You had to be earning income now. So you're still coaching. You're still doing all this. So how did you organize your days?
So my day is fairly full. I am fairly organized going into this. And it's coaching calls and Zooms and things like that for my corporate clients and for my existing. I have 400 people who have access to me right now. That doesn't mean I have 400 clients, but between my companies and between my individual clients, and of that, 100 are actively doing calls with me. That's a lot on a month. So that's 100 people that are doing at least 1 call a month with me, and those calls range from 10 to 30 minutes. So you do the math, fairly busy, but I have that, and then we lump this on top of it. So I realized right away, structure was going to be really, really important, right? And so, it's just old school, nothing that people don't know, but it is setting your day up the day before was hugely important. So I have everything on an Outlook calendar, but I actually write it out old school on a piece of paper. And I write out the next day so I know what's available when I'm booking calls for the next day. Because the whole trick to this, Rick, was getting people on my calendar. 80% I was closing when I got them, but it was texting and calling and getting them booked for that call. So I would set that up. And what I realized when I talked about in the last one about having that bad day was that my state, Tony Robbins talks a lot about state, right, was phenomenally important. So, getting good sleep, having a morning workout, plenty of nicotine and caffeine, right? So how is that nicotine, by the way, you feel?
It's not bad. I don't feel nauseous.
You're not going to throw up? Maybe
No,
I'm just
good.
a wimp. Yeah. I just hold that up, show them how much I gave to you. So
he gave me, if you're just listening, which most are, I've got like enough nicotine here to kill a horse. So
he's got a whole bag of it. Yeah. Cause I didn't like it. So, but it was really, really important to go in with a positive attitude and take care of myself. And so I learned that. That's why Mondays and Tuesdays were the best, right? I was freshest. Fridays were the worst, both because people don't want to talk and also because you're burnt out from the whole week.
That's really good insight, though.
Yeah, and Saturdays I would set up Mondays. I didn't sell a lot on Saturdays, but they were great days to get through to people.
So you were texting.
I was texting and do you have time on Monday? And that's the whole thing. And, I tried a ton of different stuff. In the beginning, I tried sending them my calendar so they could book a call on that. That didn't work at all because it was an extra step. So what I narrowed that down to was just sending them 3 times for the next day. Don't send them 10. Can you do 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, or 1:30?
I love it.
Yeah, that works.
It's sort of
great.
like the old, when you're on the phone with someone and you're trying to get them to your club and you say something like, you don't say, well, what's a good time for you? You say, what works better, mornings or evenings?
You got it.
Mornings, great. Wednesday look good? Good.
Yeah.
8 a.m.? Okay, great. Yeah. That's the way you do it.
Yeah, exactly the way I did it. And that really worked well. So the organization of the day was really just setting, and I didn't do this the first week, and it killed me. I left my schedule wide open. So I was taking calls from 8 in the morning till 9 o'clock at night. That was not sustainable. So I kind of narrowed that to 8 to 7-ish, and I would give myself breaks during the day and all that. But I saw where the prime times were, which was that 8 to 10 in the morning. We talked about that. It was phenomenal. That was where most of the sales happened. Most of the calls got booked. And then also after work was really good, right? So I'd set up the day, have that organized, and work in those breaks. And then really my whole job throughout the day while I was selling was setting up the next day. So that's really what I was doing, right? Like, and to me, because I know my stats, I knew if I got them on the phone, really rare. Yeah, really rare we weren't going to get them. So to me, the sale was really getting them on the phone.
Great point. And that's where a lot of the effort, right, comes in, which I know we'll get to, but that was the example of the, 10 text messages, 5 calls. It's just to get them to the call.
Just to get them on the call. Remember, you and I did the math in the beginning when I had the first time I did like 8 in one day. You're like, well, how long did that really take? And, on average, my calls were 12 to 15 minutes.
Okay.
So that was the average,
Yeah, that's
right?
a great stat to hear.
Yeah. So 12 to 15, I had one that was 7 minutes. I texted you guys like, just go on in 7
New
minutes.
record, 7
and then
minutes.
I had one that was 28. Somebody really, really wanted to talk and all that, but on average, 12 to 15. So my actual call time, even if you got 10 people, what's that? 2.5 hours. It's not a lot. It's the setting up. That's where you put your effort. So if I was going to coach anybody on this, is be super diligent and push your effort into booking calls, because the product is so good, the process is so good, you'll get good at it, right? Just get the reps in, but you got to get people on the phone and know also where to put your effort. So that's where the mass texting was great. So in the beginning, I didn't read the manual. We talked about this, right? So bad on me, shame on me.
That's all right.
I was literally manually cutting and pasting every single
into
text.
Individual text.
Now in the beginning, when you have 40 leads, that's not a big deal. Right now we're at 700 leads, right? And a lot of them have gone away or whatever.
Sure.
So now you can do mass texting. And so I would do that every day as well. And I got really good at that, about the language in that. And I shared that with people. And anybody can look at that, by the way. Any of the franchise can get on there and I'll give it to them.
Oh, it's great.
Of like how to get people to get an answer. We talked about that, right? Like, so I would literally say, hey, you reached out to us a month ago if you're no longer interested, I don't want to bug you anymore. Please just let me know and I'll take you off my list. To just getting a call to action.
So when you had, say that you had you didn't have many, but if you had a down hour in your organization of your time, you would take that time to go circle back and get people to give you either a yes or a no. Either book a call or get off my list, and not in a bad way. I mean that so that you can like, okay, great, now I know. Yeah. Don't call me again. Great. No harm, no foul. I'm going to push you to the side. We're not for everyone. We're expecting 15%. You beat the pants off of that, which is great. But in those downtimes, you went back to the well, back to the well, back to the well.
Constantly.
And I want people to hear that. It almost bleeds over into our next point, but that's it, right? It's just keep going until you get a yes or a no.
100%, and be okay with that. The stop. Stop the text. Those are okay. Stop. Please stop. Well, say stop.
If it's 3%, who cares?
Who cares?
One person saying that you're irritating them doesn't mean everyone thinks you're irritating them.
Yeah, and also we go back to the only core value of Alloy I know is humor with a touch of crazy. I don't really know any of the other ones. That's all I care about.
I'll reduce them to 3. I'll fill you in after. We just did it. I just did it over the weekend.
You got over 3? Yeah. Okay, I appreciate that. I still won't get it.
I know.
So have a sense of humor. So you would get a lead. Literally, it would come in on Facebook. And me, this was a funny thing too that Will said. He goes, "You're really, really aggressive, and we like that, but you have to let the automation do its job." I would be texting
you would
people.
Beat the automation.
Beat the automation. So that's when people say they haven't done anything. I'm like, what are you talking about? So a lead would come in, the automation would hit them. They would text back, whatever the automation says, is this Joan or whatever? Is there a good time to talk? And they would text back, who's calling, please? And I would say, this is Alloy, you just put information. And they'd be like, why are you calling me? This is crazy. And I'm like, you just put your information into our ad. Why are you not knowing who I am? It's so funny, right? But you have to have a sense of humor about that. I've talked to other operators that get really upset. They go, oh my gosh, that lead cost me $9. And I'm like, you have 300 other leads.
Don't perseverate on the one
laugh
negative.
About that and move on.
Well, it's
right?
the way we say that we're wired, right? But we have to be better than our emotions, right? We have to conquer that.
For sure.
Understand the real stats. Understand that we're all wired humanly to look for that lion, as you mentioned, just trying to kill us. You're not trying to be killed by somebody saying no. Just, okay, chalk it up and move on. There's a whole bunch of other people out there that need your help.
And you'll know that. And the good thing is you're hearing this if you're a new franchisee. But you'll know that within 1 week that there's no scarcity in this, right? Like get away from that scarcity because there's so many people out there and we only need 130. There's 30,000 people in our circle. I only need 130 of them. I'm not worried about it. And that's, another thing that would happen is, at my old gym, we had all these price points. Remember looking at that? I think it had like 55 price points or something, right?
I think I've used your pricing sheet in some presentations
I'm sure
what not to do, and we did it at one point as well.
By the way, we had 2 of them because we had different levels of trainers. So I think we had 50. I think we had 110 price points. Well, we have 3.
And one of them is kind of a
we don't even use it.
Right.
I think out of that 150, we had 5 people do the 199, and I think 2 were personal friends.
And that's one time a week for those of us that are listening.
Yeah, right? And so we don't even mention it. I always say 2 and 3 sessions. But so another thing is like not wasting your time when we talk about organization, and not in a mean way. But if somebody calls and they're looking for silver sneakers and they want $5 a month gym, like I don't even pursue that call. I don't even go down that road. I used to, by the way. And I would try to get them on a $39 a month open gym or, whatever. With my old gym. Yeah. And I just know like that's another thing of experience and having this sort of wisdom. I hate that word. We don't have any wisdom, but no wisdom at all.
Old man. It's like old man strength. It doesn't even exist.
Gray under here.
We claim it.
I know. And but I still help those people. Like I was like, you know what? I know a great gym down the road. Where do you live? And I would get them to a $10 a month gym.
Great point.
Because they're not going to, it's not going to happen.
It goes back to what we talked about. Like you're going to get more leads than you need, typically.
No doubt.
You're in a market that's target rich for what we do, right? Not everyone's for us. And so, getting someone on the call and going through 30 minutes of strange questions that don't get to the end, it's kind of pointless and it's a waste of your time. So in an part of organization is, so do you know where we're located? Good. So you live close by?
Mm-hmm.
They go,
or do you work here?
That's a yes, right? Yeah. And so, oh, so you work nearby. Oh, that's great. So it's convenient then. Yes, right? Mm-hmm. Good. So you're sort of pre-qualifying some of these answers, right off the bat. so that if someone's like, no, I live 45 minutes away, well, that's not going to be a client that's probably going to want to come to you, especially long term. So, I can only afford $10 a month. It's like, we'll get to that earlier in the call.
No doubt.
So that you don't waste 30 minutes only to find out that they don't want to work out with you at all.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's reps, right? So that is, I can tell you all this, but you have to get on the phone and get to that point. And,
right.
It's funny. I realized when when I did it for 10 weeks or 8 weeks straight or whatever it was, and then I stopped and then I went back, I was rusty. And I was almost like I didn't have my script down. It took me a couple of days. And it's also a little different now because we have a gym.
Now, let me quantify what he's talking about. So when Rami turned his marketing back on to backfill from some of that operational strain that we had, the first day he went like 8 for 9. So this is really Rami taking practice reps to get 8 for 9 and off of his game.
I don't even like to talk about it, Rick. I mean, it's really upsetting.
You suck pretty much.
Well, it was really funny. At one point, I was 25 for 25, which, again, I'm saying that I was rusty, but I was still closing it, but it didn't flow.
Right. I know what you're saying.
You know what I mean, right?
Yep.
And then I got a family, and Joy and I got that one together. That was fun. It was a little team week. It was a family of 4. So I actually was like 29 for 25 or 25 for 29. In other words, flip. I had more sales than I had phone calls.
And that's a whole nother level. That's something that we won't get to today, but getting someone on the phone and then,
getting the
while
family.
You've got them there, you get a referral. Like, hey, what does your husband do? And it's like, heaven forbid that again, they're like, you know what? I'm glad you brought that up. And you're right. I need to get so-and-so in here. So there's a whole nother playbook. We could probably do a different podcast on like how to ask for that extra referral at the point of sale, because that's a perfect time to do it. They're never more excited.
Yeah,
right?
and then the starting point is a great time to do that too.
Exactly.
So you're there, and oh my God, my husband could really use this, and all of a sudden you're setting up another one. So
I'll call him.
Yeah, so there you go. And I always do. And having the systems too in place, like not just handing them a business card, having that app. It's so amazing. How many times do you think I've used that at a party? Poor people are like literally holding my phone and putting their information in. I met a woman at Lake Lanier.
A pina colada here. Let me help you. Put your phone information in my phone.
A woman and her husband at Lake Lanier. And I'm like, where do you live? Like, we're in Dunwoody. And the guys are like, oh my gosh. And then, of course, I could write off the whole dinner because I just made a sale. No, I'm just kidding.
Attaboy.
Yeah. But, so that to me is the organization. I think the takeaway.
So plan your day.
Plan your day. And realize that the effort, because we're already jumping onto effort.
Yeah, so the next one you got, so we covered the why in 1, we covered organization, now we're going to move into effort. Yeah. So let's transition right in.
Yeah, so I think we've already hit on it, right? We've already moved into it, that I realized really quickly within a week that the effort is in setting the calls. And it is, and I told this when I did the
But I will say this, because we're obviously working with many more franchisees, right? Yeah. A lot of folks in pre-sale right now. That's for you. And I will say the effort to get them to the call is the hardest part for you. And it's still a lot of work. And that's where most of your like blocking and tackling comes in. Mm-hmm. Once they're on the call though, it goes back to the first podcast, which is like, how convicted are you? Because those go really well, but they can also not go well if you're not well sorted and you're not practiced and you're not convicted about what you're selling to someone. Yeah.
So one of the things that to distill it, and this is organization and effort together. And I talked about how my first calls were like a half hour long, and they were full because I love, I'm a coach. That's what I do, right? Yep. I dive in and I peel back the onion and all that. And I realized all I really had to do was take down just a series of notes as I'm going, and it was their age, what they've done in the past. I always ask, have you done coaching before? Did you do one-on-one? Did you do group? So I know where they're at. And then their pain points, right? And then repeat.
So repeat those again.
So age,
what they've done,
so that, really get an experience level. Also where they're at. Oh my gosh, like what a shock. I've talked about this personally about what COVID did to this country, of how deconditioned. I would say that 50% of the people I talked to did nothing for 2.5 years. They didn't even go for a walk. So imagine, like you were talking about plopping 130 new people in. Let's say 50% of those can barely get up off the floor. So props to the programming to be able to do, to go to that, right? And all that. So I would take down these points, but really the most important thing is pain point and goals. Their pain point and their goals, and
then relating what
go back
Alloy
to
would do back to, and if you ran into a sticking point, you'd circle back to their why,
always
their goals.
Yeah, remember you said that you really, really didn't like large groups. You did Orange Theory, and you really didn't like 30 people in a group. You hated going to a gym and not knowing what to do. I'd repeat that back to them. That's what we do. You just show up and we will walk you through everything. And that was the flip. And I literally learned that in about 4 days of selling, was that
Awesome.
it was just repeating back to them and just taking those notes, and I would underline them as I was talking so I could repeat back to them. And that's why the calls were only 12 minutes. And literally they would be like, okay, sounds great. What do I do next? You know?
Let me ask you this, and it's a rhetorical question for me, but I want to hear your explanation. How much time did you spend explaining the nuances of what we do?
I don't know, about 8 seconds. You know,
Right.
really, seriously.
Well, and
unless
honestly-
it came up. Like every
Sure.
once in a while, you get a geek, you know, like me.
Right.
And all of a sudden, that's a 30-minute call. By the way, I love those calls. You know me. I want to dive
the
into it.
opportunity to talk about the deep dive on the programming and
But
the
that
FMS and
might have
movement.
been 1%. And I realized that really early, that's not what they want to hear.
So
They
would
want to
you
hear,
say then, let me stop you there because this
Yeah.
is a really important point. Would you say that it's probably a detriment to the sale to start digging into what we do? I feel like yes, I want to hear yours, but you know, the clients don't fully understand the process. And I'm not going to say it doesn't matter, but it's the result that they're looking for.
Yeah.
And so if you can get to their pain points, to your point, convince them that you have the solution to solve their pain points, the detail around that is irrelevant.
Right. Unless, just to push back a little bit, unless it relates to their pain point. So like if somebody tells me, I really want to gain muscle and lose body fat, well, guess what? We have a really sophisticated machine called the InBody that measures that. I don't want to go into how it works or anything like that, but we can tell you exactly. And by the way, we're going to do that once a month to make sure you're hitting your goals. Wow, that's great. We don't talk about the training with that person because our training informs that, right? The
Yes.
programming is getting them to
Right.
lose body fat and gain muscle. How do I know, that the coach is paying attention to me? Well, guess what? We only have 6 people in the group and the whole gym is dedicated to you. There's nothing else going on. You know, when you go to LA Fitness and there's all this loud music and you don't know what's going on, you can't hear your trainer. None of that is happening, right? So if it informs what their pain point is, I do it. I go there, but it's really minimal. I give a little bit of an overview because they do want to know. Like there's some people like they have no idea what it is. They haven't gone to the website. They don't know anything. They're like, is it a one-on-one or whatever? I'll go into that. But other than that, it is answering their goal with what we can do for them. And that's it.
You could
It's
really
simple.
honestly mic drop and walk off on that because
Yeah.
that's it in a nutshell.
That's it. And again, I had to learn that the hard way, but luckily over 30 years of doing this, I know how to pivot quickly now. And I realized in the beginning I was overselling. I was still closing them, but it was 30 minutes and I didn't need that at all.
Right.
And they don't need it. People are too
We always
busy.
joke about grabbing people by the lapels and shaking them and saying, just take their money.
Yeah.
Like we've literally, and this is not necessarily in the franchise structure, but when we've been coaching sales for 15 years with clubs all over the world, and somebody would come in and say, literally, they might say something along the lines of like, yeah, well, it sounds great. Like, well, how do I get started? And they're like, well, let me tell you about the training and stuff. It's like, whoa.
I was I was done.
Right.
It was done.
I was ready to sign up.
Yeah.
And then you run the risk of like saying something weird or like talking them out of it. It's like, just go. If they're ready, just go.
It's like the whole credit card thing, right? Like that was a big, I'd never done that before. I've been doing this for 20 years. I've never
Collecting
asked
credit
for a
card.
credit card over the phone for a product that doesn't even exist yet. And then you guys, I love that. Who was it? Noelle or who was the one who did the hotel thing, hotel reservation? I'm going to give her credit, even if it
was
wasn't her.
Noelle.
I think it was. Where you just say, we just need to hold your spot until you come in, because actually some of these people were weeks away. So just like holding a hotel room, we're going to get your credit card on file. We don't touch it. We don't bill it until you actually start training.
All that's true. And
90% of the people were fine.
what I love about this model is there is true scarcity. So it's one thing to run an ad that says, we're looking for 10 women in Roswell to sign. It's like everyone knows that's BS, right?
Yeah.
When you only have 130 spots and you're selling at the level that Rami was, you're selling 20 memberships a week or whatever that is, you're really running out of spots. And so you're
Especially
not,
prime spots. Yeah.
Yes. And you're not lying when you say, I need to collect your credit card so I can hold your spot. When are you going to get it to me? Okay, great. So tonight, if I don't get it tonight, I'm going to cut your spot loose because I've got
Yeah.
a
I mean,
whole
the
bunch
only,
of people
the only
behind
time I
you.
wouldn't get is if they were driving. And you know me, I even asked for them to pull over once in a while.
Unbelievable.
Well, isn't there a rest stop or something?
Right,
I mean,
yeah, just pull
don't
over.
you have it memorized?
You do.
No, I would just book a call for the next day and I would get it then. But I'd always set a time to do it,
Yep.
But like even when we go back to those mass texts, like my mass texts were 100% honest. I would take 130 and I would subtract how many people I had, and I would say we have 18 spots left. And the next, I sent one every single day, Rick. Every day I sent a mass text. There's 17 left. I wanted people to see those texts
16,
every day.
15,
16, 14, 10.
12,
We're just
8.
about done.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll keep going.
Well,
7.
but no, this is, yeah. And then there's none. This is easy math.
Yeah.
But that's the effort.
That's the effort.
Right? Because like, it's one thing to like, you do 2 text messages, you don't hear back, and then you tell yourself, and I don't know why, maybe it's a scarcity mindset. Maybe it's just, you haven't ever worked at this level before, and you're like, yeah, I reached out to them, but they just didn't seem interested. It's like, but you didn't. You didn't. I mean, I'm using you as the barometer. It's like, did you text someone 10 times and call them 5 times?
And it's so easy. There's no excuses. Back when I was doing it manually, that was a lot of work, right? I did that for about 2 days. When I called the marketing department, like, do you guys have a way to do this like as a bulk text? He's like, you didn't read the manual, did you? Oh, this is Rami.
Of course I didn't. Well, and so you could then, with our software, you could create a mass text. You could do the countdown. You could basically do the takeaway, like, yo,
yeah,
now or never, right? Kind of idea.
Yeah, I mean, give you an example.
What was the response to that?
So for me, I have it almost down to a science, right? So if I have 100 people and, they're in buckets, right? So the first bucket is a lead that came in that never responded.
Cold lead.
It's cold. It hasn't responded to the automation or anything. Let's say there's 100 in that bucket. I send out 100. I'll get 5 stops, and I'll get 2 people booked for 5 seconds of work.
Right.
Those 2 people, I'm going to close them. They're $11,000 each for literally under a minute's worth of work, because all you're doing is putting in a mass text, send it out. Do that every day, and the stops help us, right? It kind of lowers that. It delineates that list. It makes it better. So it just became a system. It became a system, and to me, this is fun because it's a product I love. I love bringing it to people. I love seeing people's lives change. I like numbers and sales, and I like winning, right? I like that feeling too. So there's a lot to it, But I am shocked when I talk to, new guys or people that are maybe struggling a little bit, and I'll ask them what you just did. I'm like, well, how often, how many hours are you working, or how often are you texting? Once or twice. Once, I'll look back and I'll like, no. Like, go look at my people. Like, I look back and then I'll look and I'll literally see, Rick, you can see every text that went through. I'll see 20 of them. So that's 20 days. And on the 20th one, the person goes, sorry, I've been really busy. Can we talk tomorrow?
Amazing,
right?
And it was. And
had I done 19, I lost that person.
Man, that's effort. But
yeah,
it's one mass text that takes 5 minutes to craft.
Not even.
To a bucket of people that are in either a cold lead, hot lead, whatever. And those texts are different, but you've got them in those buckets.
Yeah. One of the mistakes I made, 2 mistakes I made. I would mass text responded leads, and I thought I was being really smart. And I still do this a little bit, where I would put in parentheses, if we have already talked, please ignore this message. And then I would put the same message as I put in, and that offended a couple of people that I'd had conversations with. That was lazy. That was just lazy on my part. And then also, capital letters don't work really well. And I thought I was just getting their attention. I had 2 people drop off because I was yelling at them. And I was like, no, I was really just trying.
Just excited.
I was just excited. I was really happy.
So they felt like the caps were.
I was yelling at them. Yeah. So that was a lesson that I learned really quickly. So whatever.
You don't want them anyway.
I know. Well, the bottom line is that's another thing. When you have this many leads, is immediately whether they're a fit.
Right.
Immediately. I know by the tone of the response in their first text whether they're going to be a fit. Sounds great! Exclamation point. Yeah, tomorrow's good. Or who's this?
Who dis?
Who dis? Get those once in a while. Mm-hmm. Yeah, those do not work. You know, or or they'll start giving you information in the text. And then the other thing too, I don't do this a lot, but they ask for information up front. And I have a set email that I can say if they really don't want to get on the phone, but we know the minute you send it out, you have not talked to them, you haven't created value.
Yeah, what's the context of the info? What are they going to do with that?
They don't even know, and what does it mean? And
how do you put into a succinct? And we have all this built out, but to your point, it's a completely different level of engagement. Unless you talk to them and you peel that onion and you get to their whys.
Yeah.
the stuff is just stuff. It doesn't mean anything.
Doesn't, and it looks really expensive before they see the value. They're for $359 a month for a gym.
Let's stick with that for a minute. I want to keep you on that. So what would you say to someone who is saying, it's too expensive? Like, does that happen if you do all the work that you've talked about in the first 2 podcasts?
No, it doesn't. It's interesting. And one of the things I got from Jared, actually, which works great, is I tell them about the pricing before they ask. And that sounds a little crazy because they go, don't tell the pricing. But I say, no,
I agree with you 100%.
I throw it out there. I say, and I literally,
well, obviously that's the way we're coaching.
I tee it up. Yeah, I tee it up and I say, everyone asks about pricing, so I'm just going to jump on that. And I say, typical, I start with how expensive personal training is. And that was Jared's idea, and I love it.
So you take that away by saying,
typical personal training in Atlanta,
pretty expensive,
$60 to $100 an hour. We're able to give you all that connection, that small group, the individualized, for only about $30 a session. If you do, got to be careful. You got to say if you do 12 times a month, because people will check you on that too. Like they do the math, and that changes the whole dynamic. And that can end the conversation, and that's okay.
And that's okay because you're trying to get a yes or no.
Oh my gosh, that's completely out of my budget. Yeah, And then, of course, I don't give up right away, ever. I'm like, well, what is your budget? Well, how important is your health? Like, I can go down some of the typical salesy type things. But really, if they're like, I had no idea. I thought this was a $30 a month gym. That's so rare because the marketing is so good.
Right.
It really does. But people slip through cracks. It happens. And the thing is, to be efficient, to be organized, learn that in the first 3 minutes, not 27 minutes into the call.
Right.
You've got to move on to another person and know that. And
I love that technique of like setting precedents. And a couple of things can happen.
This is not a $30.
Listen,
this is not LA Fitness.
It's pretty expensive. Yeah. Now, when you say that, you're setting some anchors, right? For the typical avatar that we have, if you say it's pretty expensive, this is someone who might all day long spend $300 on a dinner. So to sell them something in that $300 to $400 range for personal training, if it's the right person, it's not expensive. So by saying this is pretty expensive, and you in our ideal avatar, that's not expensive.
Yeah,
and that's another thing that we often coach.
They've scoffed at me a couple of times. Come on, dude.
That's it.
Yeah,
that's what they say.
Yeah, spend that on wine.
Some of that could be ego. Some could be pride. Like, I'm a high roller. That's nothing to me, right? I hate to say that, but there's some of that involved. But it's also, I just like the fact that it sets precedent. So either you're setting them up for the shock factor of the price if it is a stretch for them, or they're going to hear expensive. And then for the ideal avatar for us, that's not a lot of money. I hate to say it. And so that it's almost like downselling them when you actually give them the price, right? Because expensive to them could be a lot more than that. And if you look at the other services and products and dinners and the things that our customer avatar participates in, this is not expensive for them. One thing we have to be careful of, not us, but like people selling, and we've talked about this a lot, and the way that we phrase it is do not sell from your own wallet.
Right.
Just because you can't afford it as the coach or the director or what have you, doesn't mean it's not an amazing value, and it doesn't mean the person on the other end of the phone can't afford it 5 times over. Yeah. And that can be hard sometimes for someone who's young, who maybe hasn't, made that much money yet. And so for them, they're like, wow, that's a lot of money. Yeah. But the person you're talking to, it's not a lot of money, right? And so don't sell from your own wallet. Yeah,
that's super, super important. And the other thing too, that I learned really quickly, because you have such a volume of leads and they're so good, is that, I didn't go into the salesy stuff. Like there's probably, I don't know, let's call it 10 people that if I had really worked, I could have almost forced them into the gym. It was a stretch and they didn't really want to do it and it wasn't a fit. But look, we want 130 great people in our tribe.
I love that.
Right? And so why would I force it? Which, by the way, we've all had to do that. When I had to have 300 people in my gym to make it profitable, I had to do that. I would do anything to get that person in,
I was talking to someone the other day, and do you remember the old personal training arm of LA Fitness?
Yeah.
Boy, they sold hard.
Yeah. And they would sell a year up front.
Yes. And one of the downsides to that would be just this disastrous back end to that. So you would sell someone something that if your sales are, we've done a whole podcast, can you be too good at sales? And it's speaking to exactly what you said. You're going to use your sales wizardry to put someone in your gym that has no business being in there,
right?
Probably can't afford it. said yes, maybe because of some trickery or whatever. But the problem with that is your churn's going to be high. You're going to have a gym full of folks that really shouldn't
and they have a
be
bad
there.
experience.
Correct.
And then they're out in the community telling people
Correct.
this place forced me in. I didn't really need it. I couldn't afford it or whatever. So, it's so rare to have to go down that road. So it really is, you get super good at it. I mean, within 5 to 7 minutes, you know where the call is going. And the good news is, the bottom line is, through texting, if they book the call, they're probably good. They have enough there and they really do know about it. So, but it's been super fun. But look, getting back to the effort, just to kind of close that out.
Yep.
It's a lot of work. I don't lie to people, man. It's not, it's not 3 hours a day.
Your lens is skewed in a positive way, meaning you've been an entrepreneur for a long time. Is there anything that you could offer someone who's brand new to this and it's going to feel like this insane amount of effort? I mean, maybe just perspective on, I think you've done a little bit of that already, but what would you tell someone who's like, this is really hard or this is a lot of work?
It's funny. I just had this call with one of our managers, and I said, let me put it this way. And this person's been in the industry for a long time. I said, think of how you're working now. We literally did that for 20 years in my other gym. Now, maybe not, I'd say maybe 80% of this, but I sold like this all the time. You only have to do this for 12 to 16 weeks. So as hard as this is,
suck it up.
Suck it up. Like, seriously, like, I don't know how else to put it.
Right.
But it's, and again, I'm a little jaded. Like, I don't have a whole lot of empathy when somebody tells me, and I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, if I had to do this for a year, it wouldn't bother me, because I know that, going way back to my why, this is a 10-year return for me. It's probably going to end up being about 6 months of but nothing like that first 12 weeks, right? 12 weeks, it's a sprint, right? Like, anybody can sprint 100 yards. If you said you had to do that for a marathon, it's impossible.
Right.
I know that. Look, you haven't done it, but I can share with you, I did that. And look what it did. Like, I was completely burnt out. You knew that when I sold the business. Like, I was done, because I had been doing that level of selling. I mean, all those funnels we did, and all those, how many different things that we do, selling people things that I didn't even like, like that. Remember what was it? It was a $500 3-month package, and if you lost a certain amount of weight, you got all your money back.
Oh, the old 6-week challenge thing.
Oh my gosh,
that was interesting.
Brutal.
Yeah, we don't have to do any of those tricks.
No, none of that. But that's what that would be. I mean, I'd have to search my brain, but the first thing that comes to me to tell somebody like that is, it's short. It's wrap your head around the fact that you're going to be doing this. Hopefully, this is your career. Hopefully, you're doing this the rest of your life. And if you only have to do this, and then maybe once in a while we do a fall back to fitness, or like I had to kind of step back in. But even when I stepped back in, Rick, so I sold those memberships. Then we realized we were going to have the churn, so we weren't going to hit 130. We turned the marketing back on for 2.5 weeks. Those 2.5 weeks were nothing like the first 12 weeks. They were, I don't know, hour and a half a day.
Right.
Because I had gotten so good, the leads were good, and it was such a confident sell at this point, because I have a gym. I know you need me. It was very, very different than when I first started, and I was looking at, I need 75 people before I even get paid. Like, I really had a different,
It is an adjustment, I will say. Like, we coach to exactly the things you're talking about around effort. It's a push, and we try to steel people against the fact that they're going to have to work super hard for a short amount of time.
Nobody believes you, by the way.
Well, there's a
really
difference
don't.
between talking about it and doing it, and when you get in there to do it. But I will say what you said. Listen, one of the great things about entrepreneurship, even if you're an operator and you're not the investor, you're the one that's in there. You're learning to be an entrepreneur, and there is certainly financial return on that investment, but there's also emotional return on that investment. And what I mean by that is you're stacking skills, you're stacking resiliency, you're building mental toughness, you're building so many skills that will cross over into any area of your life later. Yeah. Just suck it up and do the work. Yeah. I mean, it's not, it's like we talked about, the way that the brain works. Like, if something is difficult and you do it and you overcome it and you succeed, there's a brain chemistry change to that. Yeah. The real good stuff is in the work. Like, when you and I talk about that 12-week time span for you, you speak of it fondly. You almost laugh when you talk about the effort that you put in, because look at the results. And like, you didn't expect it to be any different than that. You buckled down. You knew it. You jokingly earlier said, we're not going anywhere for 12 weeks. I'm going to blow the doors off this thing.
Yeah.
You focused and you blew the doors off.
Yeah. Remember at one point I said, I'm just going to travel around the country and do this for 12 weeks everywhere. And
at the end of the 12 weeks, you're like, yeah, I'm not going to do that.
I was like, all I'd have to do is 4 of these a year. He could just send me somewhere and then give me like a month off in between each one. Of course, Heather was super excited because I wouldn't be home.
Yeah,
so she
4
was like,
months out of the
awesome.
year. Fantastic.
Rami's not home.
Andrew's going to be like, why don't you go with Rami?
I know, it'd be
team up on this.
great. It'd be awesome. And then at the end of 12 weeks, I'm like, yeah, we're not doing that, Rick. It's a lot. And that's why I'd like, so, opening the second one now, it's a little bit of a different process. It's a little slower. Part of me is, I'm really frustrated we haven't found real estate, but part of me is also like, I don't mind a little bit of a break. You know what I mean? Like the pacing is okay.
Right.
Like had they stacked on each other really quickly, especially the fact that I had to lean back in on sales, I'm a God person and I really believe that was kind of put that way on purpose.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so it is a lot and, but it's so great,
I think we'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
So
yep.
Again, to reiterate, find your why. Organize your day and organize your thoughts and yourself, right? And put out the effort. It's a short period of time. You got to sprint every now and then. And even if you're not the investor, even if you're just the operator and you're hired to do this, you are learning the most valuable skills about being an entrepreneur. So use it as an opportunity to test yourself, to learn along the way, and what the things that you'll learn and the skills that you'll stack, you can take for the rest of your life.
Totally agree. Couldn't have said it better.
Well, I appreciate you, man. I don't know what else to say other than that. I mean, we did a good job of beating this thing up pretty good, but I think it's going to be really
Is that 9 hours?
What are we at right 12 hours. But I think it's good for our franchisees to hear it from someone who's done it. I appreciate the heck out of you, man. I brag on you all the time, but it's so good to hear it reflected back to us in exactly the way that we're trying to teach it. So we really appreciate you, man.
I appreciate you guys too. It's been great.
That's it, folks. Rami O'Day. Peace.